Those maybe all too often moments that you find yourself worrying or feeling stressed for anxious, stressed for any number of reasons, right? We experience it so much now in our everyday lives. In fact, it's actually become so common for us to feel that way that we've begun to see it as normal to feel stressed and anxious. But it's not. And we weren't meant to get up every day and walk around full of stress and anxiety. Did you know that 90% of physical illness is related to stress in one way or another? 90%. And it is also significantly impacts our mental health. And so we it is in our best interest to learn the tools to actually handle stress and anxiety and get ourselves to a better feeling place. And one of the things that I want to share with you is that stress and anxiety are when we feel out of control. We are worrying, we are feeling stressed and anxious because we don't feel like there's something in our heads that we're thinking about, whatever it may be, that we don't feel like we're in control of the outcome. And so we're worrying about it because we don't feel like we can take control of what's going to happen. And so when we're doing that, that's actually part of what I call giving your power away. And we've taught it, we've learned it. It's how society in so many ways operates. And that's why it's become normal, but it doesn't have to be normal. And we don't have to give our power away. And so one of the things we have to be careful about is what we're telling ourselves and what we're having conversations about, because that's how we get locked into a feeling or a belief that we can't control what's going on or create success in our business, even with changes going on. So when we tell ourselves that we can't succeed because of something going on around us, whether it's a recession, whether it's, whatever the economic climate is, then we are telling our brains that there's not a solution. We are also causing our bodies to release more cortisol and decrease the positive hormone. As we stay in the space of stress and anxiety and worry, our brains produce more cortisol and produce less oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. And those are the hormones or the chemicals that increase our brain's positive function, like our ability to see solutions, our ability to focus, actually. When our brains are producing a lot of stress hormone cortisol, I mean, when our body is producing that, it actually causes us to become our brains to become sluggish and to have a hard time making decisions and that's what happens when we live in that space for a long period of time, and that's what long-term depression can do for us too. So it's really important to understand that there is neuroscience behind what's going on as well. And so if we've been in stress and anxiety for a while, we need to approach getting our way back to a better space in multiple different ways, because we want to start releasing our body to start releasing more positive, happy hormones, so to speak, and less of cortisol. And there's multiple ways we can do that, and we should employ multiple modalities for that. If we catch it early, then our main thing is we can learn to change our thoughts. We can learn to recognize that what we're telling ourselves about what's going on around us is what's creating the stress and anxiety more so than what's actually going on around us. If we're facing a possibility of a job layoff, we can either sit for weeks or months or in stress and anxiety worrying about it, or we can start to think about, well, if I'm going to not have this job, what would I want to do? Would I want to stay in this industry? Would I want to leave this industry? Would I want to stay doing the same thing I'm doing now? Or is this an opportunity to do something different? And as we start to focus on, what could I do? Where would I want to be? Then we can decide, do we want to clean up and polish our resume? Do we think that there's plenty of jobs out there in our field, just not with this company because of whatever challenge it's having? Or is this a time to think about how can I transition? And if I'm going to get a severance package, do I want to use that to educate myself in a different field? What do I want to do? And because you can start taking steps that way. And this is called, it's part of learning how to be solution oriented instead of staying in the stress and anxiety. And it's a really important part of creating an extraordinary life and also living a healthier, happier life because stress and anxiety do terrible things to our mind and our body. And we sometimes don't realize that we are choosing to stay in stress and anxiety, that it's most likely subconscious, but it's a choice. And we can choose to gather up and learn the tools to help us to think differently, look for solutions. And, sometimes if you don't know what you want to do next, this is a time to your positive action is exploring it. Maybe you set a goal for yourself. If you're really struggling with it, having trouble sleeping, some of the things that you can do are appreciation journal, which you can set a goal to get up and go walk 15 minutes. 15 minutes, 20 minutes will change how you feel tremendously. And early in the day, if you do it right after you get out of bed, it lowers your cortisol the most if you do it right when you get up. And you come back feeling more energized. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually. And you come back feeling more energized and already feeling more like you can tackle whatever's going. Because when you get up and do that every day, the consistency of it and how you feel in taking care of yourself does a lot to not only suppress the cortisol but start to release more of serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, dopamine, all positive chemicals. And these things help your brain function better. So the other advantage of doing it early in the morning, even if you do, like a lot of times I do just a 20-minute walk in the morning so I can get a few more things in my morning routine to have a fantastic day. And then later in the day or in the evening, if it's summer, because it gets really hot here, hop out and do another 15 to 20-minute walk. So I get my exercise in for the day, my steps in for the day, but I split it up because I want to make sure that I'm on time to work, ready to go, feeling really fantastic. And that really helps to get the chemicals already going in the right way. So then when I sit down to journal and mentally prepare, meditate, and map out my day, I'm already just from what I've done by going out for a 20-minute walk in a better place from a chemical standpoint, ready to tackle projects and awake, and my brain is focusing. And that's so important because stress and anxiety dilute our focus. And actually, worse than that, it tells our brain that there's nothing we can do about it. And so our brain doesn't even try to look for a solution. And this is so important because so when I was struggling financially for those years, that's what I was I was so worried and I was stressed and I was praying and I was, you know, feeling negative and talking negative to myself, all the things that raise the cortisol, decrease the dopamine. I didn't understand the neuroscience of it at the time. Dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. And then I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good mentally. I didn't feel good physically. I struggled to sleep. And, you know, I struggled to stay in a mentally good place at work. And when I started changing creating a morning routine, doing my morning routine, looking for things to appreciate, those were all things that started to change my brain chemicals and allow my brain to stop stressing and anxiety and start focusing on looking for solutions. And so it started to decrease that voice in my head, the negative one. And I started to be able to say, oh, and my whole team started to be able to do that. So my stress and anxiety was spilling over to everyone around me and creating this. Every challenge felt like overwhelming instead of, ooh, what can we do with this? And when we can really get ourselves in a good place mentally, we can start to believe that every challenge has a solution, which we'll talk about more. But every challenge has the potential for a solution, and every challenge has the potential to take you to somewhere you've better than you've ever been before. In other words, challenges aren't meant to take us down, and we take it that way, and then we feel overwhelmed and we feel like we're not enough. And I can't tell you how many years I have my business that I thought if a big challenge came along, that meant I was doing something wrong. And then I spent all that time beating myself up and feeling stressed about it. And what I finally learned was that big challenges are always big opportunities. And when we start to understand that and realize that there's always an opportunity, there's always a solution or more than one solution, and that every challenge has the potential to grow you, grow your business, have you take it somewhere you never would have thought of if that challenge hasn't come along. That's when it really starts getting good. And when you find yourself in a place where you think you've got your anxiety and stress figured out and you think that you're headed towards a solution, but it keeps coming back, then there's probably something you need to figure out and go change how you're doing it so you feel more in control. Because stress and anxiety always means that there's an element somewhere that doesn't feel in control. So, if you're a startup business, and you're working with, a limited amount of capital, you can be worrying about, well, when am I going to hit break even and what am I, right? But if we stay in that focus of negative, we are making it slower for things to come, for us to see solutions, for us to attract the clients by seeing or whatever it is we need for our business by seeing the next steps, the unfolding, because now our brain is over here focused on the problem and the solution is never in the problem. So it's a good thing to understand that because then that means, oh, I just need to figure out and create more steps that I feel in control of. I'm going to do this next and I'm going to do this next. This is the goal. If I'm not, if, and I'm going to assess frequently where I am, but without judgment. Because sometimes when we're assessing where we are, we're freaking out that we're not already somewhere else and going back to stress and anxiety. And again, that changes the brain chemicals and it has you focusing on the problem. So the goal of sort of check-ins is, oh, if I'm here and I want to be there, what else can I do? What else can come to me? What other opportunities? But then once you assess, you identify the problem, you focus on the solution. And that's the key. You can't wallow in the problem. You can't spend all your time stressing and worrying about the problem because there's no solutions that can come from that. And actually, now you're producing chemicals that affect your ability to sleep, that affects your brain's ability to focus. And so you're not going to see the solutions that are right there for you. And so many times, this is the difference between success and failure. Everybody has the opportunities to succeed. Everybody. But we have to stay focused. No matter when it feels like you might be in failure, there's still always an opportunity to succeed as long as you choose to believe that and you stay focused on looking for solutions, trusting that there are opportunities and solutions out there to get you to the next level. And you just have to stay focused on what can I do next? And when you do that, your brain will find solutions and opportunities in unique places when you stay focused on that.